The Battle of El Makhzen, also known as the Battle of the Three Kings, was a significant event in history that took place on August 4, 1578, in Morocco. This battle holds great importance as it marked the end of the Aviz dynasty in Portugal and had far-reaching consequences for the Portuguese Empire. To understand the significance of the battle, it is important to provide background information on the key figures involved. Sir Thomas Stukely, presumptive Marquis of Leinster, was a seasoned campaigner with a long history of military experience. He had fought alongside some of the great captains of the day and had courted and trumped monarchs, princes, and popes. Stukely found himself in Morocco, squinting into the sun, contemplating the irony of his situation. He, who had evaded death in numerous battles, was now facing the clutches of a lunatic boy king. The boy king in question was Sebastian of Portugal, the seventh and last king of the House of Aviz. Sebastian was an unusual character, raised as an orphan and burdened with high expectations. He was unmarried and childless, with no clear heir to the throne. The future of an independent Portugal rested on his young shoulders, and the hopes for his success were particularly high. On the other side of the battle was Moulay Abdelmalek, the Moroccan Sultan who had recently returned from exile and overthrown his nephew, Moulay Mohammed. Abdelmalek had a vision for modernizing the Moroccan army, incorporating professional soldiers and emphasizing infantry. He had witnessed the capabilities of skilled forces like the Janissaries during his time with the Ottomans and was determined to develop a similar cohort of infantry for his own army. The political and military context of the time set the stage for the battle. Portugal, with its vast empire extending from Africa to Asia and the Americas, was a fragile state despite its wealth and power. The Portuguese Empire was at risk of being subsumed by Spain, as mandated by a clause in a marriage contract that would pass the Portuguese crown to Philip II of Spain in the absence of a legitimate heir. Against this backdrop, Sebastian saw an opportunity to conquer Morocco, conveniently nearby and an easy target. He had been inspired by the glories of Portugal's past and the notion of leading a crusade against the Muslims. With the civil war in Morocco providing an opening, Sebastian assembled a large invasion force, including Portuguese levies, foreign troops, and even Italian mercenaries like Sir Thomas Stukely. The stage was set for a clash between the Portuguese and Moroccan armies. The Battle of El Makhzen would determine the fate of Portugal and Morocco, and its outcome would have far-reaching consequences for both nations. In the months leading up to the Battle of the Three Kings, both King Sebastian and Moulay Abdelmalek made extensive preparations for the impending conflict. Each leader had their own strategies and tactics in mind, as well as specific goals they hoped to achieve on the battlefield. Sebastian, the young and ambitious king of Portugal, had long dreamed of conquering Morocco. He saw himself as a crusader, following in the footsteps of his ancestors who had fought against the Moors during the Reconquista. Sebastian's plan was to launch a grand invasion of Morocco, using the might of the Portuguese Empire to establish a foothold in North Africa. He believed that by defeating the Moroccan forces and capturing key cities, he could expand his own empire and secure his place in history. To achieve his goals, Sebastian spent months preparing for the campaign. He called upon the resources of the Portuguese Empire, including its vast naval fleet and experienced soldiers. He leveraged the pepper trade to secure loans and recruit mercenaries from across Europe. Sebastian also sought the support of his European allies, including Spain, in order to bolster his forces. The Portuguese army was a diverse mix of troops, consisting of Portuguese levies, foreign mercenaries, and naval personnel. The core of the army was the tercio regiments, which were a combination of pikemen, swordsmen, and musketeers. These regiments were organized into brigades, each commanded by a colonel. The tercio formation was a formidable force, capable of repelling cavalry charges and delivering devastating firepower. In contrast, Moulay Abdelmalek, the Sultan of Morocco, faced a different set of challenges. He had recently come to power after overthrowing his nephew, Moulay Mohammed. Moulay Abdelmalek knew that he needed to strengthen his army and modernize its tactics if he wanted to defend his kingdom against the Portuguese invasion. Moulay Abdelmalek focused on building a professional army, recruiting and training soldiers who were loyal to him. He also invested in artillery, developing mobile factories to produce cannons near the battlefield. This allowed his forces to quickly deploy and utilize their artillery in battle. Additionally, Abdelmalek sought to improve the coordination and discipline of his troops, ensuring that they could effectively engage the enemy. The Moroccan army consisted of a mix of cavalry and infantry. The cavalry, known for their hit-and-run tactics, provided the mobility and speed needed to counter the Portuguese forces. The infantry, including Andalusian arquebusiers and tribal warriors, formed the backbone of the army. Moulay Abdelmalek's forces were well prepared and ready to defend their homeland against the Portuguese invasion. As the battle drew near, both King Sebastian and Moulay Abdelmalek finalized their strategies and tactics. Sebastian's plan was to launch a coordinated assault on the Moroccan forces, capturing key cities and establishing a foothold in the country. He believed that a decisive victory would secure his place in history and bring glory to Portugal. Moulay Abdelmalek, on the other hand, aimed to defend his kingdom and repel the Portuguese invasion. He knew that his forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but he believed in the strength of his army and the determination of his soldiers. Moulay Abdelmalek planned to use his cavalry to disrupt the Portuguese formations and exploit any weaknesses in their defenses. The Battle of the Three Kings would ultimately test the preparations and strategies of both sides. The Portuguese army, with its diverse composition and reliance on the tercio formation, would face off against the Moroccan forces, led by Moulay Abdelmalek and his modernized army. The outcome of the battle would have far-reaching consequences for both nations and shape the future of the region. The battle unfolded with the initial clash between the advance guards of both armies. The Portuguese advance guard, consisting of the Aventureiros, Italian regiments, and German contingents, moved forward with disciplined cadence, lowering their pikes as they approached the enemy lines. The Muslim advance guard, led by the Andalusians, volleyed their arquebuses and tried to shake the oncoming lines. However, the slow reloading time of the arquebuses allowed the Portuguese to close in. The Aventureiros, known for their impetuous nature, outpaced the Castilians and Germans, leading the charge into the Andalusians. The pikes of the Portuguese soldiers drove back and broke the Muslim front ranks, causing confusion among the enemy. As the battle progressed, the Portuguese cavalry and infantry regiments engaged combat with the Muslim forces. The Portuguese initially had some success, pushing back the enemy and capturing two of the Sultan's standards. However, their advantage was short-lived. The lack of coordination among the regiments and the absence of reserves hindered their ability to sustain the attack. The Moroccan forces regrouped and launched in fierce counterattacks, overwhelming the Portuguese advance guard. The battle turned into a brutal fight for survival, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Portuguese cavalry, led by the Duke of Aveiro and Sebastian himself, charged the enemy in an attempt to regain the upper hand. They briefly succeeded in driving back the Moroccan cavalry facing them, but were soon surrounded and forced to retreat. The Moroccan cavalry reserves launched counterattacks, pushing the Portuguese invaders back into their own lines. The Portuguese infantry, armed with pikes and other close combat weapons, fought valiantly but were gradually overwhelmed by the enemy's superior numbers and firepower. Sebastian fought alongside his men, leading cavalry charges and rallying his troops. However, his efforts were in vain, in the face of honorable Moroccan army resistance and determination. The Portuguese army lacked a cohesive command structure and was unable to mount an effective defense. As the battle wore on, panic and chaos engulfed the Portuguese invaders' ranks. Many soldiers threw down their arms and begged for mercy, while others attempted to flee the battlefield. The Moroccan irregulars, eager to join the pillage, attacked and fierced the exhausted and disoriented Portuguese soldiers, further adding to the carnage. By the end of the day, the battle was over. The Portuguese army had suffered heavy losses, with thousands of soldiers killed or captured. Sebastian himself was separated from his retinue and met an unknown fate. The Moroccan forces emerged victorious, securing a significant and honorable triumph for the Saadian dynasty. The Battle of the Three Kings marked the end of Portuguese ambitions in Morocco and had far-reaching consequences for the future of the Portuguese Empire. The battle was characterized by intense fighting, with the use of artillery, firearms, and cavalry charges. The Portuguese artillery, though reduced in number, played a significant role in the initial stages of the battle. The cannons fired salvos, causing chaos and confusion among the Moroccan ranks. However, the lack of ammunition and the loss of key positions hindered the effectiveness of the Portuguese artillery. The Moroccan forces, for their part, showed great determination, using a combination of arquebuses and cavalry charges to devastating effect. The constant volleys of arquebus fire and the skillful maneuvering of the cavalry put immense pressure on the Portuguese troops. The Moroccan cavalry charges were particularly devastating, as they exploited weaknesses in the Portuguese formation and targeted the exposed flanks and rear. The Portuguese cavalry, though initially successful in some engagements, ultimately succumbed to the great determination, courage, and superior tactics of the Moroccan cavalry. The Battle of the Three Kings was a turning point in Portuguese history, marking the end of their ambitions in Sharifying Kingdom of Morocco and the decline of their empire. It was a battle of immense significance, with far-reaching consequences for both Portugal and Morocco. The aftermath of the Battle of El Makhzen was marked by devastation and despair. Casualties were high on both sides, with thousands of soldiers killed or wounded. Among the key figures involved, King Sebastian of Portugal and Sultan Moulay Abdelmalek both met their ends on the battlefield. The battle had significant consequences for both Portugal and Morocco. For Portugal, it marked the beginning of the end of its great power status and led to a period of political and military instability. Spain eventually seized control of Portugal, bringing it under Spanish rule for the next 6 decades. For Morocco, the victory at El Makhzen solidified its independence and established it as a regional power. It ended Portuguese attempts to expand their empire into Morocco and secured the country's borders. The Battle of El Makhzen had a complex legacy. In the immediate aftermath, it was seen as a great victory for the Moroccan forces and a humiliating defeat for the Portuguese. It bolstered Moroccan national identity and pride, while dealing a severe blow to Portuguese morale and prestige. From a broader historical perspective, the battle is often considered the end of the Crusades and marked the final failed attempt by a European power to expand its empire through military conquest in the Islamic world. The Battle of El Makhzen, also known as the Battle of the Three Kings, was a significant event in history that marked the rise of the Saadian dynasty in Morocco. It was a battle of ambition, courage, and tragedy, with devastating consequences for both nations. The outcome of the battle highlighted the complexities of warfare and the importance of strategic planning and leadership. It serves as a cautionary tale and a reminder of the human cost of war. The Battle of El Makhzen holds a significant place in the larger historical narrative and serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of different regions and cultures. Its lasting impact on the region and its place in world history make it a significant event that should be remembered and learned from. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. For more information about Morocco, visit our website morocconation.com. We hope to see you again soon.